All right. We'll give it a couple seconds to let YouTube catch up, because I like to keep an eye on the actual YouTube stream as it goes out. There we go. All right. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of our Workflow Wednesday. This week, we're joined by Ed Tang, the technical director of Belle Wissell Co. And so Belle Wissell, actually, I'll let you a little background, who you are, what you do, and what Belle Wissell does in general, and what you do for them.
Totally. I'm Ed Tang. I'm here in Seattle, Washington. I work for a design firm called Belle Wissell. We are located also in Seattle in the Georgetown neighborhood, although I'm currently from my house because of COVID, and we're all working remotely most of the time, going on site as needed to work on hardware and testing and coordination and whatnot. What's the next question? Who am I?
What you do for what Belle Wissell does overall, and then what you do for them.
Yeah, so we are a design firm. We were primarily known for museum exhibits, and I still love working on museum projects. That's kind of like my aspirational goal when I pursued a career and joined Belle Wissell. So we work a lot of museum exhibits. We've also done a lot of large experiential kind of media projects. Not including video walls and sculptural kind of media installations, interesting web experiences, and even doing graphics for a performance venue.
Oh, cool.
So if you are in the Seattle area, you might have seen our work. We did the big kind of SkyPad video wall at Space Needle, which is on the observation deck, which was an awesome project for us. And Space Needle is an amazing collaborator. And that's also a project we did with you guys at Future Systems. Right. And that kind of project, doing that project kind of launched us into this kind of world of like large media video walls. Like you see that project on all the Pinterest boards.
Yeah.
Kind of media experiences. We've done work for the University of Washington, did a big, cool, kind of artful yet content-rich video wall project for the new computer science building, also with you guys. We did the crazy interactive graphics system for Seattle Symphony's third performance venue inside Benaroya Hall. It's called Octave 9. If you had an opportunity to go see that space, and kind of, it's like a small intimate performance venue.
It's gorgeous.
We've done in the Seattle area. We've done some work for an Umpqua Bank, Flying Heritage Collection, Paul Allen's Airplane Museum up in Everett. We do stuff. We are a small group of designers, technologists and project managers and content strategists. So, yeah.
Is it all local stuff?
No, we've done stuff elsewhere as well. Kind of one of the first big studio projects we did was all the digital interactive for the Harley Davidson Museum, which was awesome. And I've been out there a couple times to do kind of computer updates and content updates as well. That's kind of the first project that comes to mind. We did a big animal adoption facility down in Los Angeles, the Wallace Annenberg Pet Space.
Wow.
So,
cool.
Big is basically like if the Apple Store met a functional animal shelter.
That's cool.
Insane. So yeah.
Right on. So we touched on this before the stream, but I'm curious. So I guess we'll just pick an example. We'll say that if you're allowed to talk about, I guess the process, right? Maybe we won't pick on any particular client that you worked with. I don't know how secretive they may be, but so say, here's a good example. Say Puget wanted to do a big crazy thing. How would that start? I guess
Yeah, so I feel like one of the kind of strengths of Belle Wissell and what we do is that we have a very kind of cool and very defined process, a very collaborative process with our clients. So if you came to us one day and be like, hey, we wanted to do something really big and cool, right? We would sit down and talk about what is it you want to do, right? And talk about the intended audience and talk about the kind of this, where is it going to go? And, what do you want? Kind of those basic kind of questions that all end up in kind of living, kind of breathing documents that we're all kind of continuously sharing and iterating on and looking at. we kind of, obviously there's money, like how much do you have to spend on this darn thing? Who are your kind of partners that you're going to be working with to kind of install and do this? And who is going to be looking at this every day, and who's going to be maintaining it, right? So, and especially when we're working with both larger and smaller institutions, actually, like, it's really important to me and us as a company that whenever we install something that's like super rich, digital, and complicated looking, or complicated actually, that it's up and running every day, right?
Oh, sure.
Nothing's worse than like a touchscreen or something in a museum that says out of order.
Right.
Right. So, it's kind of aligning with those kind of institutional kind of guidelines or structures, that's kind of like a big part of my job. It's kind of that kind of risk assessment and kind of the boring. But yeah. So anyway, then we move into kind of like that, kind of this parallel track where it's working through almost at like a wireframe level, or we call them
okay.
Right. So it's like we're kind of like creating and crafting that user experience, given what we know about the visitors and accessibility requirements and the content, and we're working on that. We're also on a parallel track working on the design. What is the thing going to look like? Colors, shapes, typography, content, right?
Yeah.
Working on those parallel tracks, and in the ideal world, right, those get married at the end of that. But at this point, and where we are continuously iterating, we're continually prototyping, we're sharing all this with the client, so there's no surprises. At times we will build out complete prototypes of interactive experiences at the wireframe level, right? So we are now testing from a development standpoint, is this going to work, right? Without worrying necessarily about those little fine visual details like typography.
Now, when you say development, is there like custom software involved?
So we are primarily custom software at Belle Wissell, right?
Well, there you
go. Yeah. I mean, there's off-the-shelf tools of increasing extent nowadays that allow people to kind of create their own touchscreen experiences or interactive experiences on a video wall really quickly, and that is awesome. We are primarily custom though, at Belle, right? So back in the day, when I first started, kind of in the world of like multimedia development and whatnot, we all use Flash, right?
Oh yeah,
yeah, and that's in the news, right? Because we killed it. It's dead. It's dead. Everyone still uses animate to animate cartoons, but so we had this whole generation of kind of Flash developers, like building out touchscreens, video walls. Like behind the scenes, we did this 20-foot wall for Space Needle. That was done in Adobe Air, an ActionScript. That's Flash, right? Yeah. Flash, and kind of and I totally get as like a web tool why it had to die, why it had to go, right? But kind of watching that kind of, it was like, because the workflow from a designer to Flash was so easy. It's all Adobe, right? Like you can literally its entire set of design elements from Adobe Illustrator, Alt Tab over to Flash, hit paste, place things, and start wiring things up. I mean, we're simplified, but and plus ActionScript through was an awesome language. Like it was JavaScript done correctly in many ways, right?
Yeah, and you goof, but that is the truth of it. Like honestly.
So back to the thing. So custom software development, right? So watching kind of the trajectory of kind of the software development inside of Belle Wissell, it's very much about these ActionScript 3, like kind of Flash developers moving up, and then we dabbled a bit in the kind of the C++ network kind of frameworks, the open frameworks. I think there was one called that one, and Cinder was another one.
That sounds familiar, sure.
Programming kind of platforms that were kind of hot for a while, and then it was painful, right? Because like, let's make a button and make it touchable on a touchscreen. Like how much scaffolding, how much code do you have to write to get that up and running, as opposed to design it in Illustrator, copy it over into Flash, and wire it up. Well, anyway, so it's kind of trajectory. And then, but now the web tech, web technology is so strong. Node.js, right? Just like this magical world of software development libraries. All I do is basically, if you have a problem in Node, you can Google it. Someone probably wrote a library for it, and you can use it per the license. Boom,
Yeah.
Right. So you can create all these custom experiences, ranging from video wall content to sculptural art piece, to Seattle Symphony music visualizer, all in JavaScript.
Wow.
within the browser. It's fantastic.
Well, that's
right?
interesting. So
Yeah.
it's not to oversimplify, but it's kind of web development in a way,
Right,
like
right.
fancy web pages almost.
And it's fantastic because then you can just work on it on your computer, right? So there, in terms of this world, this kind of creative tech kind of display world, there's that approach nowadays where we're all kind of pushing the boundaries of JavaScript, the boundaries of the browser,
Right.
the Windows canvas that we have to work in, well, the canvas element, but that we have to work in as well. And then there's another track of creative technologists doing amazing work in tools like Touch Designer. I don't know if you guys work with anyway. So Touch Designer is this incredible tool that more kind of creative technology using to kind of create both interactive experiences, kind of passive experiences, music visualizers, kind of concert venue things. So in a way, it's interesting to see how that's kind of changed over time in a way from Flash.
Yeah.
So in my case, actually, my first programming language was Director. I don't know if you remember Shockwave Director.
Oh, okay. That's a little before my time.
You ever get those when you go to Sam Goody and you buy a CD and it said CD and it said you could put it in your computer and something would happen? Like, you get a little thing and you get a picture of the artist. Anyway, that was all done in like Director. It was this kind of other offering for that tool that Macromedia had made us more on the CD-ROM side as opposed to Flash web, right? And then the whole thing died this ugly death. But that was the kind of training tool that non-programmer, non-computer science people like me had when we were first beginning to like experiment with interactivity.
Sure.
What
so that's a good question. No, but that's good. I suppose it was part of like the process and the
right. Oh yes,
I had asked about custom software.
Yeah, and then we kind of use kind of traditional nomenclature where it's like we have quality assurance, like any other kind of software project. So straight up quality assurance. At times we do really intensive load testing, kind of automated load testing if needed. Experience, because when you're testing at home or you're programming at home with a mouse, it's very different than a touchscreen, right? And we have our touchscreen everywhere deployed for the developers, but someone's going like this and stuff like that. You can't really, or like this, right? You can't simulate that with a mouse, right? So we have automated tools kind of test that and stuff because there are several approaches to keep your kind of interactive experiences running, right? You can either run them and then have a little like daemon in your system that keeps the checks if the application's running, and if not, relaunch it.
Oh, sure.
Kind of like watchdog programs, or you do it like us and you just test the hell out of it so it never crashes.
And I think that is the better approach. Stability is better than resetting because in my opinion, more problems can come up if you're resetting all the time
nowadays, right? With Windows 10. But yeah, so the quality assurance, and then we literally call our final product the Gold Master, just like we used to back in the CD-ROM days, right?
Yeah.
And it's deployed to the client. And when it comes to kind of larger, and where the trajectory of Belle Wissell is going, like larger media installations, larger kind of more complicated projects, there's the audiovisual aspect of it too, right? So if you guys feature systems are building a big video wall, right? Like with touch panels and whatever, right? There's kind of that component. So throughout the whole process is this collaborative process with the architect or whoever's designing how this will fit into the space. Electricians, right? Low voltage wiring people. How where is the rack going to be located for all the gear, right? Working with Wilson and kind of like how do we get a computer that fits into this rack with the video card that I want, right? All these things, how the networking and stuff like that. And you'll be surprised at how many surprises occur in real projects. Like it had instances where our video wall is going to be installed. Installer shows up. There's no power.
Oops.
There's no conduit, right? Or they're drilling, through a wall, and there's pipes there that weren't on the drawings, right? It happens, right? It's complicated. So there's a construction element to it as well that we're part of the process of as well. So. And then when it's time to install and get the things up and running, I very much and our other members of our technical team are very much end up kind of being the content owners, right? Because we know how the content should look, we know how it should act, so we will represent it as the audiovisual side gets kind of resolved and finished. And hopefully it opens and we're good to go.
Yeah, I'm curious how. So you've mentioned video walls quite a lot, and I have a very limited understanding, multiple outputs from a graphics card or whatnot, and
Right.
then I know that you're able to kind of sync many together, but like how does that work? I guess.
There's a black box in between. Usually, there's a box between our machine, right, and the wall, right.
Okay.
So they're called like video processors or controllers or whatever, right. And they've gotten super nice over the years, which is really handy in terms of the interface that are used to kind of talk to them. We've looked at LED products and wall products where it literally looks like it was written in Chinese because it was written by a Chinese developer, right? But nowadays, increasingly there are like web-based kind of solutions, and you can literally take output A and map it to screen B and whatnot, and through kind of like a virtual switching environment, which is
Okay.
awesome. Yeah. So that kind of once it leaves the PC and kind of enters that world, I lean heavily on our friends in the audiovisual industry, to kind of, like we kind of constantly verifying requirements and diagrams. Like, this is how I want it to show.
Sure.
How do I help you guys get there? And then there's the nightmare about video cabling and whatnot. And maybe you know this. Why do like NVIDIA cards, like a really nice video card, you get DisplayPort out, those little clippy display, and then audiovisual industry, it's all HDMI.
I don't know, honestly,
right.
because DisplayPort is an open standard. You don't license DisplayPort. HDMI, you have to pay. You have to license HDMI to use it. I think, and I've asked this question myself, I think what happened was HDMI came out first.
Okay.
And hardware manufacturers, in particular television manufacturers, they had no other choice. So they produced a bunch of product that only had HDMI, and then DisplayPort comes out, and well, it's too late. We have a million things already using it, so we have to continue to support it. Because I'm pretty sure no matter how you slice it, DisplayPort is the better standard. You get better refresh rates, you get better resolutions, higher throughput. But
it's just a continual struggle and pain of trying to bridge a 4K like 60 hertz DisplayPort out to get 4K 60 hertz back in on the HDMI side.
You mean you can't just use an adapter like from Amazon?
Yeah, well, I order a bunch of them and then I return them when they don't work, right? So, right. So then, so there's that kind of final component of the install and kind of wrapping the project up, and there's and then along the way there's content management, for example. Like, we often build out or utilize existing content management systems because we want to empower our clients, when it's possible, to kind of use what we've created as a canvas or as like a receptacle for new content and something that can be continually updated and fresh and awesome. So we kind of increase the value of what we work on increasing the value of what we're working on for the client.
Sure. I'm curious, what stands out as how do I phrase this? So a technical challenge that was the most like rewarding to solve.
Good question. I'll just throw out technical challenges that we have solved, and we'll just kind of think about it from there, right? Here, I'm gonna send you a link, and we can toss it up, right? So just to give context to our friends, the project we did for the Seattle Symphony, right? Can I chat, or how do you chat?
Oh, you won't be able to. Or there's a private chat, yeah.
I'm gonna send you a link, right? So this is the kind of the Octave 9 project that we did. It was a continual set of challenges, which was a lot of kind of fun to be part of the process and working on, right? So we were the space is at Benaroya Hall. It's at street level, and it used to be something called Soundbridge, which was used as kind of an educational venue for like kids' workshops and kind of teaching about classical music and instruments, right? Yeah. So it's a square room with a really low ceiling, and the idea is to kind of create this kind of this experimental performance space, right? Where it would be a place for experimenting, to kind of question and create new forms of performance, right?
Sure.
And for the first challenge was just like, how do we create an immersive experience like outside of the realm of like strapping on individual VR, AR goggles, and how do you create something that's shared, right? So
Yeah.
we're involved really early on in the process with our friends at LMN, the architects, LMN architects who were the architects for Ben Arroyo Hall and that particular space. Like, how do we create something immersive, right? So all sorts of kind of hardware and kind of design research went into that. To like, do we just like coat the square room, you know, with kind of interesting LED tiles or projection, or can we wrap them in something, you know, and working through the logistics of how you create a curved screen, you know, that you can like part and panelize and whatever. And it was really fun to be part of that process with the architects, who are obviously the ones who actually know how buildings work.
Right.
We were given this canvas, right? We were working with Jackie Holden, who is like the audiovisual for super high-end concert halls. So we know they're the experts. We know they know what we're doing, right? So it was like, we're given this canvas, and we're given this resolution, which is 10K. 10K? 10K. 1, 2, 3, 4, 10. Anyway, it's super. Yeah. Yes, each projector is a 1080 projector. And
okay.
10 projector. So we were getting this canvas. So how do we render that canvas using kind of our existing technical talent?
Sure, like that's super mega ultra wide.
Mega canvas, and how do we manage that and kind of map it in a way that's sane for us to use, right? And develop on, you know, given kind of we're not going to get to actually hook everything up to the projectors until kind of close to the end of the process, right? You know, with smaller scale projects, we're able to do that. You know, we're able to actually get the gear, order it early, order our computers, order our projectors, and actually mock it up. We have a kind of fairly large prototyping space.
Oh, neat.
Some of the shots of that are in kind of the promo videos I've done with you guys, and you know, when you guys visited. So we got large projection surface. We actually have installed parts of a video wall, and with, you know, touch technology and stuff. So we're able to, we really want to like test and prototype as quickly as we can on the actual gear to verify that everything works. There's no surprises. We can do that for Octave 9. Like we can't do like a 10 projector setup, you know, and like a curved screen. So how do we handle all that mapping and stuff, and do it kind of within kind of the constraints of like, we don't have a 20-person development team working in OpenGL to kind of create. And how do we pull this off, right? And you know, we were able to pull the whole thing's WebGL.
Oh.
The whole thing is WebGL, like running on a super awesome computer that you guys made, but it's all running on WebGL. And we were able to map, you know, we mapped all the individual display canvases. We chopped them up, and so that we could send them all to the video processor in 2.4. It's less than 2.4. You know, I don't remember the resolution anymore. Anyway, we were able to chop all these kind of squares that the projectors are up and put them into a regular aspect ratio canvas to send to the video processor to display on this. Right?
So this was one machine is running that whole thing. Wow.
Running within basically an electron wrapper.
That's neat.
It was crazy, and we're able to get 60 frames per second. We're able to like pull this off. Like, you know, like I never thought of myself as a graphics engine programmer. Right? I'm a music major. You know, like I don't know what I'm doing here, right? You know, we're working with a really talented developer. His name's Zach Archer. We've been working with for many years on interactive projects and stuff. And he was always genius. And anyway, so pulling all this together, a lot of fun. And then showing up on site and getting all those kind of little details kind of worked out and doing it really calmly. Like, say, if the resolution changed, you know, and stuff like that. And kind of and from the final mapping, and then it just bloody works. Yeah. So Octave 9 was one display PC that's hooked up to everything, kind of doing that entire canvas. At the touch of an iPad, they can actually deactivate individual component parts of the screen, and the canvas kind of resizes because it's all panelized. All the projection surfaces, curved projections, can actually be slid on a track on the wall and hidden away, so they can reach the room to kind of different configurations. So we kind of designed those configurations, hooked it up to a control system, and then there's 2 smaller echoes in the back that are doing real-time video kind of motion capture. So there's RealSense cameras, 4 of them, 2 per PC. And so the canvas can actually respond to people dancing or moving in the space, as well as audio. I know, it's awesome. And I hope when Ben Arroyo Hall reopens again to the public and stuff, you know, I'm really excited. We're all really excited for the future of this space, right?
Oh, for sure.
So 2 kind of things, that was all like C# code, I think. Intel RealSense cameras, like, and then continually streaming kind of motion data to the machine.
That's so cool. Well, actually, we have a question from Twitch. Davidius asks, "I wonder if you could make a complete seamless ring of monitors/screens."
So yeah, we're getting more and more seamless is becoming more and more achievable nowadays, right? So even when even just a few years ago when we designed Octave 9, right? There were there were interesting challenges in making the projection surface seamless itself, right? I remember there was this awesome high-end custom paint dude who was doing the surface of the thing, the finish of these panels, so it'd be as seamless as possible when they were assembled. And then projectors, right? You have to do like some projector mapping and kind of blending and edge blending in order to like make kind of projectors look continuous. Nowadays, there's LED, right? Direct view LED is what it's called, right? And we're seeing that being, our first big project with that was at Amazon Sphere, and we had a big, it was 18 panel wide, 10 panel curved screen. I'll send you the link to that right now. And that was kind of like our first introduction to direct view LED, and curved as well. And it installed correctly, it's seamless. So, I mean, we're now, and I'm sure you're totally aware of this, we're now in the world where digital backdrops made of that technology are being used in TV production.
Right. Yeah. All that virtual production stuff is blowing my mind.
No, totally. So you could absolutely create curved or ring-shaped kind of continuous canvases nowadays.
Well, actually, before I make a comment, I have to make sure that I'm not talking about something that is secret. Let me look up something real fast. Okay, it is publicized. So the Holodome, which I think was a Paul Allen project.
The Holodome, yes.
So that I think is something, Davidius, you might want to look into. That I think is the closest we've come to a real holodeck. It's like a bubble that I think it uses like high-res projectors to, you're like transported to someplace else. It's insane. That is super cool.
That a couple of our team members visited MOPA because we work on MOPA. We're friends with the people who work there. I know a couple of our team members got to visit Holodome kind of when the last time it was installed at MOPA. I know they were working on it in Georgetown because there would be a sign occasionally Airport Way going MOPOP exhibit test with an arrow. We found out later it was the Holodome team.
Oh, yeah. But
yeah, so that was right? and there's still one of the projects which I can't talk about now in the space there is basically like a very much a Holodome kind of experience. There's a high-end projector companies coming in to kind of finish the final mapping, and I know it's like sides of the dome as well as the floor to be projected on. So, right. And yeah, so you can do now. Plus, there's also floor-mounted LED, right? You know, so you could potentially do the whole thing in direct view LED now too. There's limitations, right? Like direct view LED is expensive and hot.
Oh,
right?
Sure, yeah.
Hot, right? And making sure that your LED product is properly ventilated. You know, because if you don't take care of it, it's going to peel apart. But then projection has its own issues too, right? Because you can block the projector with your body, right? You know, like different angles and whatnot, and kind of how people have dealt with that. I mean, projection is a whole world that I'm not like super expert on, but yes. So anyway, back to the question. Yes, there are definitely kind of cool ways that people are creating curved and unconventional display surfaces.
Yeah. We have another question from YouTube. Works for me asks, how do you navigate with all the egos of clients, architects, engineers, and other designers? And maybe you can share your most challenging project. Without naming names, of course, because we wouldn't want to. Man, that guy George. No.
I know, that's a fantastic question. How do we navigate all the egos of clients? The client, man. That's what we're working for. It's a really small industry. It's a really, and we got the internet now and whatever, and LinkedIn and everything. But the audiovisual side, the exhibit design side, the museum side, it's a really small industry. We all know each other.
Sure.
And I make it a personal point to be the best collaborator I can be with our partners. You know, even if at the next project, we're going to be bidding against each other, on a project. If we're working next to each other on a project, we got to get along. We're ultimately all in the same. We're all in the same war. We're all in the same kind of situation together, So, and we all have big egos as well, Just kind of the best you can, and like kind of listen the best you can,
You find there's a bit of a mutual respect regardless of competition.
Right. Yeah. And no, absolutely. The kind of a lot of our industry is built on the back of freelancers as well.
Sure.
And so technical freelancers, small agencies that work gets, kind of sub vendored out to. And so we're all kind of also all working with each other and, all the time on different projects. So, that's a fantastic question. Most challenging project. Every project has challenges. Octane 9 was challenging just because it was this ridiculous, kind of unconventional, awesome canvas, and it's a performance venue, right?
Mm-hmm.
So performance means it's got to work at a certain time every time, right? And the Seattle Symphony is the Seattle Symphony, so they obviously have this classically trained ethos of practice,
mm-hmm. Right.
So that was incredibly challenging from that regard. We did the website for Cinerama. I know this is totally random, but we did the project. We did the website redesign for Cinerama, which was the movie theater, right, in downtown Seattle. Yeah. And I don't remember which Star Wars it was. That was a Star Wars, episode 2, 3. I don't. Okay. Anyway, when tickets went on sale for that, man, you can't hold back people who want to buy Star Wars tickets. That was long nights of emails and kind of like.
Oh, I bet.
I remember that one as particular child. That was fun though, and I love the movie theater, right? So and our friends at Vulcan were awesome to work with.
Vulcan, with the I think it sounds familiar. I don't know. I can't recall exactly why.
Right. So yeah, that was challenging itself. Amazon was challenging. Really Understory, the kind of thing actually just sent out, right? So that was challenging because it was a really unconventional space. It was kind of this. It was awesome in the sense that it was a blank canvas when we started working on it, but it was really low ceiling, all these crazy structural things to deal with. The challenge from Amazon was like, this has to be a multi-purpose room, yet it's also got to be this immersive exhibit. So how do you design and then subsequently engineer a public-facing, free to the public, rock-solid museum exhibit that's got all this extremely expensive gear and whatnot, and try to make all that work and in a really, really short timeline. So, yeah.
That's neat. I'm just kind of looking through the pictures of the Understory thing, and I haven't actually been into the Amazon Spheres thing yet. I've walked around that area bunches of times, but wow, that's so cool.
So cool. The architect Graham Baba did this amazing job of like encapsulating all the kind of AV and because there's 2 completely separate AV systems in the space and ventilation, HVAC and stuff, and kind of hiding it kind of beautifully, artfully and stuff. But then we have to design our stuff. So the columns. So you see like, I think 11 columns, or some columns that are kind of flanked and kind of surrounding this immersive experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they house all these delicate LED kind of displays in them. Those all had to be movable, right? So they're bolted to the ground. We got to make sure all the wiring works and whatnot under the conduit under the ground, miles and miles of conduit in that concrete block, right? But then you got to be able to unplug them. Dylan Works, a fabricator up in Mukilteo. Awesome. Mm-hmm. They do like just crazy stuff. They design like the lift for them. Like you unbolt them, you lift, you kind of tilt them a very certain way that doesn't damage the gear, and they can get through the double doors in the back if that thing happens to be installed. The LED panels are only rear accessible in terms of service, but mm-hmm. you have to back them, right? So that front curved screen actually swings out on a hinge.
Wow.
So design engineers at Whitlock, now AVI-SPL, like they had to figure out how to like run all the cabling and the wiring along so that, nothing gets pulled when you pull this darn thing out on the hinge.
Right. Oh, yeah. Wow. See, it's stuff like that we don't, I think the general public just doesn't realize, like the the complexity that goes into these kind of things. That's crazy.
Because it's now more ubiquitous, right? We just see LED displays everywhere. You know, that's awesome, right? But the amount of engineering and kind of install and support and everything that goes in that, as well as the content on those darn things, right? You know, that you know, part of that has to be invisible. It better be invisible in the sense that it's not, the problems aren't, you know, in front of your face.
It's almost like a magic show in a way. Like you don't want to know the secret of the entertainment. You just are there to like be wowed. And but sometimes it is super interesting to know how the trick is done.
Right.
And so that's super cool. Gabe Keen says, "We love you, Ed, and your Edness." I had to put that in.
Principal of Belle Wissell. So
we also have another question from YouTube. Michael Combs asks, "Where are the needs being driven from? Are clients looking for these designs?" And then also is
a client some of our most rewarding work and some of my favorite collaborations I have with architects. Just from like a brutally honest business standpoint, you know, if sometimes when we're working with an architect and we're at that point in the project where we're working with the architect, there's still money left over. Just, you know, sometimes we'll get calls and we'll be like, "Hey, we got this big video, we want content, and we have no money." Because we didn't content. So no, but architects I love being around architects. I wish I was smart enough and not majored in music and studied architecture sometimes, but because like they're smart, right? You know, and but then watching how they break down a problem and solve it is incredibly rewarding. So I love working with architects, and oftentimes the architect is the client. You know, is how we enter the project. So in some of our kind of larger, more rewarding work that we've done over the last few years has been through actually architects and stuff. So they as well as whoever is kind of the content person or kind of driving the experience of the space, you know, they end up their combination of needs are driving the project as well as the kind of creative vision that we at Belle Wissell are kind of creating and crafting and presenting to the client.
Okay.
Hopefully that answers that. So yeah, so that kind of needs are ever like with a traditional museum exhibit, you know, some museums have extensive curatorial content, subject matter experts already on staff, right? So we are collaborating with them directly and their kind of overall exhibit design kind of vision of the space, you know. With some museums, you know, we create the content. You know, we do all the content creation and research, and you know, like with Amazon, we created the content. We went up to the, I think Woodinville, the greenhouses in Woodinville, shot on the beautiful slow-mo 4K footage of the plants, and we did our shoot in the Amazon spheres for kind of the beauty shots of kind of our help envision the nature of work in the spheres. Right, we do the photo shoot, the video shoots ourselves. You know, so. Yeah, so we in terms of content design, you know, it just kind of depends actually on the client, you know, and what they already have in store and what they have in mind.
Yeah, that's cool. It's not just the technical aspect. You guys are into content creation as well. That's pretty cool. I think you kind of touched on that a little bit, but to kind of have that right in the face is
depends on the project, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So, sorry. Let's see. Actually, I have a question, but I think it ties to a question we have from YouTube. Tommy Hackett asks, Ed, was there a most rewarding project for you as a creative endeavor? Is there a parallel with your background in music?
So, yeah, I mean, symphony was a deeply personal project in many ways. I'm a violinist. I grew up playing violin in the area. I know my brother had done like workshops with the symphony as a young composer growing up. And my violin teacher, my violin teacher is assistant principal second of the symphony. So that was kind of personal in that way because it was kind of like this connection to music. Even though music is very much divorced from my professional life. I just play violin now. So that was incredibly rewarding. That's interesting. Like kind of the most, and the creative endeavor. As a project goes, I remember launching Why War. So the large exhibit we did for the Flying Heritage Collection. the anecdote about the 20. I'll tell the story, right? So this exhibit for why war is this incredibly technologically rich museum exhibit, and I believe it was the first complete museum exhibit I worked on at Belle Wissell with, because I know Belle Wissell had done complete exhibits, before my time, and getting that thing to launch. So it was like a huge video wall, touchscreen stations that kind of tell the story of war, contextualize the story of war, right? Because Flying Heritage Collection is this beautiful, curated, and maintained selection of warplanes. Like functionally, they can fly, like maintained with original parts and tooling. Like it's a historical kind of thing. And this exhibit, it was the first museum exhibit in America that thinks about war, kind of like why does it happen through the lens of the major conflicts that the United States have fought. Well, anyway, so that was incredibly rewarding, just professionally. So like 20 PCs, like driving all this content everywhere, just beautifully designed exhibit, so much fun to work on. And so when we hooked up all the PCs, we didn't have all the internet and networking kind of like worked out yet with Vulcan and the museum. And when the internet was turned on, all 20 PCs tried to Windows update all at once. And Windows 10.
Say no more.
Windows 10 has improved my workflow in many ways, actually, in terms of like deploying kind of museum exhibits. And I'll get to, I think that's actually an interesting conversation that we might have time for. But they all tried to Windows update all at once.
Mm-hmm.
And that crashed the network. And of course, some of them braked. So that wasn't fun. But anyway, that was kind of incredibly professionally running because we had pulled off something so big and so awesome and also incredibly educational and content rich. At the openings, I had educators come up to me and just, like, were just impressed at kind of the depth of kind of content and this whole kind of experience that we created. Anyway.
Sorry, I got a little distracted by something else. I apologize. And so Ellen King Rice asks, what topic or project would you really like to do in the future?
That's fantastic. That's a good question. I love museums. I came into this industry, I guess, even before when I was working on my master's, I wanted to work in museum exhibits. I wanted to work in the museums, right? And so I still love that work. Be able to like that kind of, if it's a storytelling thing or if it's kind of presenting kind of complex content in kind of digestible ways, that meet the visitor where they want to be met.
Mm-hmm.
I think that kind of work is still ultimately what I find personally most inspiring. If I were probably younger, I'd love to do more performance-based work, like musical performance, live performance, or whatever. That would be a lot of fun. Yeah, telling good stories, telling kind of the history of things and stuff like that, exposing that, preserving them, kind of presenting things digitally, in accessible ways. That's what I find interesting.
Yeah, I like that kind of thing too. Just as a quick aside, there was we did a case study with a group that I can't recall the name of right now, but it was a big photogrammetry project. There had been it was like a graffiti space. And they were tearing it down, but they wanted to save this space for others to be able to experience. And so they took like 10,000 photos of all of everything and the shapes and this and back and forth. And they were able to create a like virtual reality space to explore because they built apartments or something on it.
Right.
And that kind of thing is really cool because there's some spots that nobody's ever going to be able to see again or experience, walk around, and it's really cool to be able to save that kind of thing.
Right. SF MOMA, so it was a client of ours, but in particular, their kind of digital initiatives over the last few years to kind of, these large art museums have amazing kind of content management, data asset management kind of system set up, to maintain their catalogs of art, right? And the increasing amount of like kind of public APIs and ways that can be accessed by anyone nowadays is so awesome. And the projects that we've done with museums at Art Institute of Chicago, at Getty, SF MoMA, at the Frick, was actually coming up with creative ways of exposing that database to the world, by by like touchscreen or video wall or whatever. That work is also extremely rewarding, right? Because museums only have so much wall space. They have so much more stuff, artifacts and whatnot than they can afford to present at any given time. So more exposure to that, it's fantastic.
Yeah. Man, I have a few other questions. You had mentioned Windows 10 had improved your workflow. I'm curious in what way? Like, how has that changed how you do things?
Yeah, so my approach, and Belle Wissell's approach when we kind of deploy things in the world, is try to be as off the shelf as possible and grow to the hardware, right? I mean, custom PCs from you guys, but like PCs, running Windows, running not running like, I know like our friends and competitors in the space, like they're deploying custom Linux servers, media servers. No. We want to make this maintainable for the boots on the ground and the IT guys who have to make this thing work, and they're usually running Windows, right? So Windows 10, right? So in some ways, it's made it easier for me because I know I can lock it down. Honestly, we just crash Windows Explorer. That's all we do. Sometimes I have to do nowadays with Windows. We had to do like crazy registry hacks and stuff with like earlier versions of Windows to like kind of suppress certain behaviors, like especially hooked up to a touchscreen. We don't want like a weird diamond cursor following your finger. We don't want Windows update. You don't want certain notifications to pop up. I just sit there and kind of unclick notifications, and nowadays in Windows 10 that's made it easier. But in some ways, we've lost so much control with updates, with forced updates. Which can be kind of painful from a maintenance side because, I log in and then I just see that blue screen like, hey, welcome, we updated Windows. What are you doing? And I'm like, oh, come on. Right?
If you set the internet to metered, in the network settings, if you tell it that you have a metered connection, it won't automatically update.
Okay, I'm doing that right now on my 3000. So there's kind of that element. So in that regard is that, but I try to stick with like kind of standard kind of computer things, when we do interesting things. It makes it easier for everyone to maintain. But thanks for that. That's awesome.
Yeah. I'm all like, because you can also tell it to like I can't remember, defer updates, but that's only for like a few months.
Oh, totally.
But yeah, I'm curious, what are your thoughts on augmented reality and how it applies to like museums and these interactive spaces?
Yes. Super cool. Gabe actually sent me a link that it's working now on mobile web, which is again super super cool, right? And then I've been kind of tooling around with it back in the Adobe era days as well.
Sure.
And we have a collaborator with our studio who's done kind of augmented reality, like live performances and whatnot. So super cool tech. Does it exist for the customer anymore? Augmented reality? So like I know like HoloLens went all military enterprise.
Right. The way I've seen it so far has been mostly like through the viewport of your cell phone.
Totally. Right.
I don't think we're quite to the point where it's glasses yet. I think Apple is working on that.
Right. And bring your own device is really good, right? Mm-hmm. Especially now with COVID and like people don't necessarily want to be touching things. There's really interesting work being done to kind of leverage bring your own device to control or touchscreens or augmented things. Well, anyway, so back to your question about augmented reality. Super cool. We've definitely conceptualized that in the past. Like kind of the marriage of augmented reality with kind of geolocation and whatnot. Yeah. I'm not convinced it's as performative yet. Yeah, it needs to be to kind of create like a kick-ass visitor experience. I love to work on experiences that are more shared and kind of larger scale.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to everyone looking at the phone, because we're all looking at our phone all day anyway. So let's not do that.
Sure.
But I love the idea of it, for sure, right? Especially in the context of a museum exhibit. Like, we've seen the demos both on the corporate side and the museum side where they have an object, right? That's kind of properly mapping. Hold your phone to it, and the heads-up display kind of thing appears, right? Where you're learning kind of interesting, rich information about the thing, and then the object can kind of stand by itself, kind of beautifully without, signs and stuff around it, right?
Yeah.
I love the idea of it, and I know there are companies and kind of services that are doing that for clients as well. So, yeah.
When you say you want it to be more performative, what do you mean?
Frame rate.
Oh, okay. Oh, is the actual performance of the device.
Just like, you know, kind of the aesthetic of it and kind of the overall kind of user experience of it. You know, like got to be really nice. Right?
Yeah.
Because there is an ask of the user to pull out their phone, maybe download the app, or even just go to a URL, you know, or scan a QR code. There's a couple asks and barriers to making it work, getting it up and running, right?
Yeah.
You have to kind of reward them in the end,
right?
You know, with that, and that's an overall issue with kind of technology and friction when in experiences, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Increasing that. So
yeah, you've mentioned a few times that you have a background in music. How did you get involved with Belle Wissell?
So I studied music. It was called music technology. It was a bachelor's in music degree. I wanted to be an audio engineer when I grew up back then, right? You know, and then I had the great luck of graduating with an audio engineering kind of background in 2001 in New York City. So obviously entertainment industry wasn't there for me. So then I got my master's at the Interactive Telecommunications program in NYU, right? So kind of a cool digital media, digital art, and how do you make the world a better place department, you know?
Cool.
And so that's kind of how I learned kind of like basics of visual design, though I can't design my way out of a bag now. Programming, you know, kind of like an interest in programming at that point, you know, through Director, and then I took some computer science classes and overall kind of user experience and stuff. I started doing like interactive art exhibits with friends. We kind of started doing shows together in New York City. And then I went back here to Seattle and started my PhD at UW at the digital arts department, which was brand new back then. Was the worst doctoral student in the history of mankind, dropped out, and then just entered industry as a software developer because I had director skills. And there were still CD-ROM companies in Seattle at that point doing interactive CD-ROMs for education. So I worked for a music, like learned how to play guitar company, and then a startup doing educational software for autism. But then Director died. I was able to shift my skills at that time at that company to Flash, to ActionScript, and more better programming. And then just started freelancing for design studios, right? Okay. So I started working freelancing through staffing agencies and direct to just marketing and design studios, and kind of seeing that role of a technologist. So awesome. You know, it wasn't just straight up software development at that point. It was kind of collaborating with these interdisciplinary teams of designers and UX people and kind of thinkers, and kind of creating awesome demos, and then actually ended up doing large keynote presentations, what you see behind the speaker for Cisco, I think. Yeah, Cisco. So did a couple Cisco lives. And and then I saw the job posting and ended up Belle Wissell. So
right on. So, and we touched on this before the stream as well, but like, say there's somebody new is interested. Right. What would you say is the best background to increase their success of getting into this sort of work?
Totally, right? So it doesn't necessarily have to be in museums or other kind of or the symphony or whatever, right? Kind of demonstrating that you've done something that someone's paid you to do, that you've created the kind of value. If you want to be like a front-end engineer for this kind of work, right? Like you've demonstrated that you've taken a client's vision and gotten paid to do it. You know, like that's kind of like where we kind of stand. Though we actually had the great pleasure of working with my friend Alex, who was a recent graduate of UW's science, right? So we weren't actually sure how that was going to work because we had previously worked with, largely a generation of self-taught developers, who basically trained on Flash and early HTML, right? And knew how to because of Flash, knew how to animate and tween and do things in code, right? And kind of create interactive experiences that way, as opposed to building all that scaffolding and do it in C, right? So, but anyway, this new generation of computer science grads, a lot of them have web experience now, and they're kind of this incredibly rich kind of, and processing. They're using processing, right? You've heard of processing, that learning programming, like creative language. So they're both learning and teaching processing now in the field now. So I'm seeing a lot of the computer science grads coming closer in that direction, kind of right off the bat, which is fantastic, So doing kind of cool interactive stuff on the web, is much more democratic now. It's much more accessible.
Oh yeah.
So pay $800 for a license for Flash. So kind of demonstrating that as well, and then just kind of endless curiosity and not being afraid. Like, oftentimes I'm juggling like 4 or 5 different programming languages a week. I'm having to switch between ActionScript and then PHP, and some dude sends me some Python to run, and I don't know what Python is. And then just learning all that stuff on the fly, not being afraid of it, and not being like, I am a C# developer, that's all I do, right?
Sure.
But yeah, and kind of seeing how kind of those base level programming kind of fundamentals kind of apply to everything, right? So, yeah.
With Flash being dead, what do you guys? Is it still so? It's not really like dead, but I mean, I guess, are you guys gonna have to use something else to make
so
this?
we moved largely away to Node.js Electron, right? So being able to deploy things via Electron with a frozen, kind of like a frozen wrapper, which is useful. So browser updates won't kill our code. We've used a whole bunch of various React, right? So a lot of the stuff that we hear about in traditional web development. So React, we've done touchscreen with Vue.js as well, and then a lot of WebGL, right? So that's kind of the exciting kind of stuff that we did for the Symphony in particular, right? But for other projects as well, Lost Cities, which is an interactive kind of web documentary that we won a Webby for last year, was done with like layers of WebGL and traditional kind of React HTML rendering on top. So yeah, so JavaScript, a lot of crazy JavaScript and kind of Node.js and frantic Googling is how we pull off.
I feel like that's a lot of software development, actually. All right, that's
and a lot of PHP still, actually, for content management and stuff like that. Mostly PHP, as well as some .NET, some ASP.NET, kind of more traditional, kind of database-driven kind of. So when we have to whip up our own APIs and content management clients.
It's kind of blowing my mind, like that a lot of these experiences are, I guess, kind of fancy web pages, in a way. Like, I know that's some kind of reductionist, but
yeah.
That's
it's the tech is moving, and the tech is moving so fast. It's in order to like quickly build out like interfaces, in order to like create incredibly performative like graphics engine code in straight up. It's incredible. Like, it's a really awesome frontier. And then you see the efforts of, like, with TypeScript or whatever, to like turn JavaScript into a proper programming language. So it's incredibly rewarding and fun. Like, I'd love to move more back end to Node.js as well, right? So we're moving just for like just totally rapid development. And I know a lot of our friends are also using Python. A lot of Python, really cool stuff being done in Python as well. And then there's the whole kind of visual programming, touch designer world, which is occurring as well. And all that stuff is kind of equally worthy of kind of consideration.
Yeah. So this kind of touches a little on kind of question that Ellen had asked earlier, but I'm curious, what looking forward as far as like the technology and things like that, what are you most excited about?
I'm really excited to be working outside of flat video wall. So video walls, it will always be there, and I love working on them. But to be working on like less conventional canvases, we've been kind of pushing towards that, and with the kind of cool LED and stuff, LED tiles, and kind of you can build modular screens, kind of super easily nowadays, right? And someday when we're not under NDA, I'll show you a project, right? So being able to do that kind of work, and like without having to deal with like projectors and projector mapping and stuff like that, just like straight up interesting sculptural work. I would really, that's what I'm looking forward to in the future, is kind of less conventional canvases. I would love to do more, just more artful stuff, or kind of environmental stuff, kind of like mood setting stuff, I like working on really heavy content driven, interesting, heavy interactive applications as well, but being able to like kind of work on the more kind of ambient environmental stuff would be super cool. That's what I would love to do. Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty cool. I see where there could be a kind of a cross, because hang on, let me just get my thoughts straight here. With the Octave 9 project, you had mentioned that the RealSense cameras to change how things interact while someone is dancing. I could see as things progress that you could potentially like map a costume onto somebody. Like they're basically just wearing a white jumpsuit,
right.
but you've got fast projectors and stuff that are following them, and their outfit changes,
right.
or just that kind of level of interactivity. I could see being, or just like it could be just a white cube on a pedestal, but then they project something different onto it, and like from your perspective, it looks like something else completely or something.
Oh, cool. Yeah. That kind of work is always exciting, and I mean, we are on the cusp of kind of breaking through towards that kind of work, which is fantastic as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely.
The future is always cool. I love talking with guys like you, especially in the creative spaces, because I'm a technologist, I suppose. I'm very, my creativity lies along more like logical routes, I suppose. I have a bit of a software development background myself, and so I'm endlessly fascinated at the artistry and the creativity of art in general, because like I can't do that. and
what are you talking about?
It's amazing. Well, not well. I can't do that well, I suppose. Anybody can draw.
Are going away. You no longer need $800 for a copy of Flash. You could actually download Designer for free, or work on NodeJS free, right? Like if you have a functional computer, you can start getting code. You can start pulling down the WebGL libraries and render something to the screen. Whereas back in the day, you needed like a copy of Visual C and that big red OpenGL book even to get started, right? So it's becoming a lot more accessible. Processing, right? Like they're teaching kids in elementary school how to draw things to the screen and code, and they're learning the fundamentals of like a display loop and an initial and like that init function. And I mean, and like this is fantastic. That computational media, like digital media, is so it's accessible, So and interactivity is anyway.
No, I love it. I think lowering that barrier to entry to creative pursuits, regardless of whether it's like videos or photographs or paintings or everything, is so easier to get into.
Right.
I feel like maybe I'm missing it, or we're just right on the cusp of a huge explosion of independent creation.
Yeah.
And it just gives me kind of totally. Just thinking about it. I'm excited. I'm excited for the future of creative pursuits.
And if that increases kind of the diversity of like life experiences and views and people who are entering the industry and creating this work, I think that's an ultimately fantastic outcome. So
I love it. It's so cool. Right on. Well, actually, that brings us to just a little over our hour. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about, mention, shout out, anybody, anything?
We Belle Wissell. Our website is bwco.info. I'll put my, you can put my email in the chat. Anyone can email anytime about stuff.
Awesome.
Chat about stuff.
That's very generous.
Yeah.
I'll put that in there. Yeah. Awesome. Well, all right then. Well, I guess we'll say goodbye. Thank you very much, Ed, for taking time out of your day to join us on our Workflow Wednesday. This was really cool. This was great.
It's been fantastic working with you guys to plug for Puget Systems. It's been fantastic working with you guys over many years. It's been fantastic. You guys have been incredibly generous and kind. I don't know how you guys put up with me, and it's been really fun to work. So this has been fantastic.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you as well to the audience for joining us on our Workflow Wednesday. We do this every Wednesday and Friday. Wednesdays, we bring industry experts like Ed on to the show to talk about their process, their workflow, technical challenges, and to give you guys an opportunity to ask questions as well. And then on Fridays, we bring a member of our labs team and soon to be consulting and support to try to provide a little peek behind our curtain, how software and hardware work together, and to, again, get questions for you guys. So mark your calendars, right? Wednesdays, Fridays, 1 p.m. Pacific. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Thank you guys soon.